It seems to us that a school, if it's anything, it ought to be an intellectual community. Sometimes it doesn't seem to be that way. We once asked a group of teachers if they thought of their classrooms as intellectual communities, and it was as if they didn't really understand the question.
So that was going on in our heads, and you're right. We did go in and we asked a small group of teachers sitting around a table, what do you think about your school being an intellectual community? And we got this sort of blank stare. But at the same time, something else had happened to us, and that was a colleague had told us about a party her youngster, 8, 9 years old, had been invited to at the end of school, and it was called a burn party. Now, we had not come across this term before. So we said, what is it? And she said, it's where a neighborhood mother had sent out this invitation to all the kids in the neighborhood, elementary, middle, high school, to bring all of your schoolwork at the end of school down to their house, and they would have a big party where they burned all the homework and all of the work that had been done for that year. I was astounded. Now, I think I probably went overboard on keeping every single little scrap of paper that my children did, so that someday when the Smithsonian wants it, I'll have it right there cataloged for them. So I understand that you really shouldn't go that far, but burning the work. And then we went online, we went on to YouTube and just typed in burn parties, end of school, and parents are posting these clips. Well, what struck us was that plus a term we had heard a high schooler use when he said, I can't wait till I'm out of jail. And he meant was done with high school. And we left with both of, or left wherever we were when we heard that, with this profound sense of loss, that school never should be seen as a jail. And we should never celebrate the end of the year by burning the work we've done. That it's only one time in your life where you have 12, 13 years, if you want to count kindergarten, where your goal is to learn as much as you can learn about this vast array, everything from art to computers to music to history to literature to math. You ought to be sad that you're leaving. And then we thought, oh my goodness, these little first graders run into first grade. They can't wait to get to first grade. They want to learn to read. They want to learn everything.
And they seem to treasure what they make, what they produce.
They do. They love what they make. That's exactly right.
And the kindergarten kid and the first grader would no more burn the artwork he had produced than the doctoral student would burn her dissertation once she got her degree.
That's right.
Because they had created something, they'd made sense of something. The kid who loses her diary or his journal was devastated by that loss. And yet these are kids who work hard on paper, scribbling out and burning them, which is...
So we think somewhere what happened is that for too many kids, and we're pretty sure it's probably not your kids in your school, because if you're reading this and your school's doing a lot of things to try to make sure your school is an intellectual community. But in too many places, in too many classrooms, in too many schools, the goal of school has become passing the test. Now, I don't think that that's any teacher's goal in becoming a teacher. Oh, I want to be a teacher to make sure kids can pass our state test. As a parent, I wanted my kids to pass tests. You're a parent. You wanted your kids to be able to do well. We're not against kids being able to do well on a test. But when that becomes what is at least the perceived purpose of school, perceived by the public, perceived by students, perceived by teachers, perceived by administrators, that the overarching purpose is to make sure we have enough kids, all kids, passing the test at a certain level. And so that's why we have this section here, so that with colleagues you can begin saying, boy, if you walked into our school, what would be your perception of this school? What are the outward and visible signs of what's important in this school? If you came into my classroom, and you didn't know me and didn't know the kids, you were just looking around. What are the signs that this is an intellectual community? And if you don't like what you're seeing, what can we begin to do as a community, as a faculty, to change that perception? And if you do like what you're already doing, how can we even improve upon that? So we started this section by talking about intellectual communities, but that very quickly pushed over into question 5. So we'll talk about that right now too, which is, what is the role of talk? Because we quickly realized as we were talking about intellectual communities that you can't talk about community without talking about talk. That's your cue.
Talk is fundamental to an intellectual community. It's fundamental at both ends of the educational spectrum. The journal, the professional journal, is an opportunity for scholars in a field to talk with one another over distance and time. You write an article and publish it, and another scholar reads it, reflects on it, does his own research, writes back. You get this long exchange. And then, of course, at the more intimate level, there is conversation at conferences and among those professionals. At the lowest, the youngest level, talk is the essence of the way the young child learns. He talks with his parents, he talks with his siblings, asks questions, gives answers, tests the limits. And somewhere in school, that mutuality, that back and forth of talk gets lost in a lot of places, and it becomes a one-way transmission of information.
Well, you get 30 people in a classroom with a teacher, and that forces one level of one way.
Yeah. It makes it very difficult to have the kind of community, and teachers fear turning over talk to small groups of 3 or 4 because they lose control. But talk is the essence of learning. You take in words, you reshape your perception of the world and your place in it as a result of what you hear. You utter words, you try to take a stance, you get responses to it, modify it further. It's this exchange of language that contributes, that is the process by which you refine your understandings, come to comprehend better what you're doing. Talk is the fundamental metaphor for learning, it seems to me.
So what we would encourage you to think about when you look at this section that begins on page 27, what is the role of talk? What we would love to see you do is start this section first by turning on a tape recorder in your classroom and recording or videoing the talk, and then step back and listen to it. In too many classrooms, talk is about, as you were pointing out, the teacher asking questions and the student simply responding to those questions. Now, if you want to create relevance, then the student has to be the one asking the questions. And when we listen to students asking questions in far too many classrooms, those questions are, when is this due? Can I write on the back? Do I need to type it? If I can handwrite it, does it need to be in pen or pencil? And of course the dreaded, is this worth something, or how much is this worth?
How long does it
And
have
how
to
long
be?
does it have to be? That's a great one. But those are all procedural questions. And procedural questions absolutely need to be attended to. But they ought to come last. They ought to come after students have asked all sorts of questions that really are about them trying to figure something out. And so we take a little bit of time in this section and we talk about 2 different types of talk, or 2 different types of questions, monologic and dialogic. And we really encourage you to spend some time looking at that section and then doing the really hard thing, stepping back and listening to the conversations in your classrooms and asking yourself, is the talk that's going on here monologic? I'm just imparting knowledge to someone else, or is it dialogic? We're both trying to figure out something together. We hope you enjoy reading both these sections. I'm Kylene Beers.
And I'm Bob Probst.